If your life is affected by multiple sclerosis or any other neurological condition, then this channel is for you. So please consider subscribing to be kept up to date with future videos. My name's Liam, and in 2018, I was diagnosed with relapse and remitting MS. For a lot of people, multiple sclerosis is really difficult to get your head around, let alone explain it to somebody else and tell them how you're feeling. So what a lot of us tend to do is pop on a mask, pretend everything's fine, try not to upset anybody else, and just keep going and getting on with it. So in this video, I want to touch on why we should be taking off the mask and why it's important to tell people how we're feeling and whether or not we're struggling. For me personally, I feel like I'm burdening people sometimes when I'm talking about my MS or I'm talking about my symptoms, I'm talking about how I'm currently feeling. I know they don't want to hear it really, but that's mainly because they don't want you to be suffering with it. And for a lot of people, ignorance is bliss. So it's not necessarily, the worst thing in the world that people don't want to hear about it. It's quite a natural reaction, but some people are quite more accommodating of talking about how you feel, but that doesn't mean that whether they are or they're not, that you shouldn't, and you should just pretend that everything's fine, because if it's not, then we need to talk about it, because bottling it up and keeping it from people is only going to be a bad thing, and it's only going to result in negative consequences when it comes to your own mental health and how you deal with your multiple sclerosis. So when it comes to talking to friends, family, colleagues, education is really important. When it comes to critical illnesses, I think people are quite comfortable with what cancer is, what a heart attack is, what a stroke is. But when it comes to MS, the knowledge, the awareness, it's not quite there. So it's not unfair to assume that people don't really know a lot about multiple sclerosis. And for a lot of your friends, family, wider circle, you being diagnosed might be the first time they've really had to think about what it actually is. They've probably heard about it before, but they don't know what it really is until it affects their life. And in it affecting your life, that now becomes part of their world. So education is really important. Explaining what multiple sclerosis is, how it is so varied, how it can be so different from one person to one person, from one extreme to the other, where, one where it might have very minimal impact on your day-to-day and just something you keep an eye on. Or it could be, you're wheelchair bound, you can't work. It can be so different and anywhere in between. It's such a spectrum. So again, to expect people to be really understanding or to be really forthcoming with support, challenges are they don't really know what they're talking about. Therefore, how do they know how to help you? All they know is that you're struggling, you're suffering, or perhaps they just see you getting on with it and smiling and everything's fine. So they assume everything's fine. So educate people on what multiple sclerosis is, and importantly as well, how they can support you. Your struggles might be different from mine. So when I'm talking to my friends and my family, I'll talk about the symptoms that affect me the most and why perhaps they're causing me to struggle so much. And from there, I can sort of direct the conversation in terms of support, or even just to say, listen, this thing I'm trying to do, it's probably going to take me longer. I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling really fatigued and feeling really down. And, I'm just going to need a bit of extra time to get my head around it. And when it comes to your mental health, being able to talk about things and get things off your chest will allow people to get a better understanding of what your condition is. But also you'll feel like a bit more of a weight's lifted and that you've got a growing support team. You can't expect people to really help you if they don't understand what it is. And they also can't really help if you're not talking about it, if you're not telling people how you feel. If you are hiding behind that mask, pretending everything's fine, they can't be expected to sort of, jump at the chance to help you with something because they just assume that everything's fine, you seem okay, what's the problem? So, being able to talk about the condition but how it affects you and what support you need, I think is first and foremost one of the most important things when it comes to MS. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your friends, your family or your colleagues or, one or all of those groups of people, then therapy is something that I would really encourage people to explore, whether that's through the NHS or whether it's by going private, or if you're in the US, whether it's, I'm not exactly sure quite how a referral to some kind of therapy would happen, but I imagine with your insurance, it can and probably will be quite difficult at times. But yeah, if you're from the US and you're watching, if you could let me know, perhaps in the comments, how that would work if you are looking to try and speak to a professional and get some therapy. Is it just approaching them directly and going private, or is there some other options? Drop us a comment, as you actually might be helping somebody else as well with their journey. Here in the UK, I have experienced a little bit of both. So I have had an NHS referral through to for some counselling, some neuropsychology counselling. So it's a neurologist, a doctor who kind of understands more perhaps what the condition is, and can help me kind of work work through a few things, but I have also as well, because of waiting time lists and gaps between sessions, there has been a time when I have opted for a couple of private sessions as well with someone semi-local, and again, I was able to just try and work through a few things, and again, just talking about it really helps, but they were able to give me some some support and some ideas on which direction to go and how I can sort of try and feel better and make the most or be as positive as I can in the situation that I find myself in. So if you have access to some therapy or some psychology sort of sessions, counselling, whatever it might be, it could just be a regular session with a friend. You meet every Wednesday night for a beer, and that's your kind of therapy. But if you can get some proper therapy from a psychologist or a counsellor, then that is really going to help. And the first time you do it, you'll come away feeling better because you've taken that first step. So if you are a bit apprehensive about talking to someone, I would just try that first session, see how you get on, because I think you'd be quite surprised with how open how you'll start to open up, and likely will want to explore some more sessions as well. If you are finding that you are bottling things up and you're keeping things to yourself, then making some positive changes to your life is to be encouraged as well. If there's a particular aspect of your multiple sclerosis that is bothering you more than others, whether it's your day-to-day sort of activities, or if it's something to do with work, then highlighting that specific element of your condition and trying to work through it, trying to find other options, that's only going to be a good thing. And it's not necessarily about finding that thing and making a huge change and everything's going to be absolutely fine, but marginal gains, making little positive changes in lots of different areas are just going to bump up your well-being, your morale, and from there, you're going to perhaps have that slight shift cognitively to perhaps a bit more of a positive state. You are taking positive steps to support yourself, whether that's in diet, whether that's making adjustments to your home. It may well be that every time you go upstairs, you get to the top and you're just absolutely wiped out. Having a handrail or a stair lift might help. If you are trying to be as active as possible, but you find yourself, getting a bit stuck, perhaps using a walking aid or a wheelchair, things like that. Maybe trying to find a company that does meal preparation for you so that it takes away some of that prep time when you're cooking and you're likely to to eat more healthy meals. These little things that you can perhaps just do a little bit better in, if you just task yourself with just making marginal gains, little changes to lots of different things, again, that is going to build momentum and hopefully improve your quality of life. And that might be one of the things that you want to talk about with a therapist, or you want to talk about with your friends and family, about how you can make some of those changes in your everyday. I know from my experience, when I'm bottling up feelings and I'm harvesting or harbouring, the what I'm going through and how it's making me feel, yes, talking to people does really help, but trying to get those endorphins, on the up, trying to get your dopamine going up and around your body. One of the best ways to do that is exercise. Now, that is a challenge for anybody with MS because, if you are perhaps wheelchair bound or you have limited mobility, then the thought of joining a gym or going for a run will either be, a horrendous nightmare or, something that just physically isn't possible. But exploring the types of exercise that you can do will, be a great positive step in the right direction. I know there are lots of sitting workout routines that you can find online. I know that the MS Society here in the UK, is it Dom, who does lots of videos for, you'll find people who are sat and they're perhaps doing some, light resistance training with some bands or some weights, pumping those guns. That is getting your heart rate going. That is helpful. You might be sat down, but you're still, increasing your heart rate. You're getting those endorphins going, and you're going to burn a few calories and get your body ticking in the right direction as well. It is knowing your limits, and it's trying to push those limits, but being sensible about them at the same time, being respectful of your MS. Trying to negotiate with it. Right, I know that my MS is going to make it difficult here. I know that there's going to be some challenges if I want to try and do this, but if I change this, try a different way, and I can perhaps do a little bit better at what I'm trying to do. And again, that's just a marginal gain that you can keep trying to improve. But exercise is definitely something I need to do more of, because the more you do, the more you're able to do. But it is difficult to get started. So I am going to start doing some exercise. This is my commitment now. You've heard it here. I'll perhaps do another video based on exercise, and perhaps take you with me on a walk or a run, or we'll do something. But yeah, it's really important and something I imagine we can all do better at. When it comes to your support team, so again, here in the UK through the NHS, I have an NHS nurse who is like my main point of contact. I was meeting with them quite regularly, and now as I'm further on my journey, we tend to meet sort of once every 6 months, or we have a telephone catch up, and that allows them to sort of document how I'm feeling, any changes that might need to be made, any changes to my symptoms, whether they've been gotten worse, or perhaps I found that some have dropped away with the whole relapsing remitting thing. So keeping that conversation going, keeping them up to date, not hiding anything from them because you think it's not what they want to hear. Be open, be honest, and tell them exactly how things are, tell them what's going on, and they'll no doubt have some suggestions for how you can perhaps make some changes in the right direction. Once again, my American friends and beyond, if you are in the US, because I have seen that there's a growing number of US citizens in the audience, so welcome to the channel. Thanks for sticking around. If you are in the US or you're in any other country and anything I say perhaps doesn't quite marry up with how things work, if you could just leave a comment to let us know how it differs, because that will help educate me. I can do more videos perhaps specific to a country or an area, in communities, things like that. So let me know if it is different. But I speak quite regularly with my NHS nurse, my MS nurse, sorry, and on top of that, not quite as regularly, but I do meet with my neurologist as well, usually after I've had an MRI, so they can see the results, talk about things. So there is that support there as well for us here in the UK. Again, I'd like to know what it's like where you're based. Open and honest forms of dialogue are going to help you to sort of pick up bits of information. There's also, doing your own research. So if you are subscribed to this channel, fantastic. Thanks for sticking around. If you're not and you're just watching this video, do hit the subscribe button. We are going to be producing more content with more areas of support for MS. So finding things like this, looking at blog posts, finding social media accounts that perhaps help with MS. All these things are either going to sort of show you that it's not just you, you're not alone. There's a big group of us here, there's a big gang, and we all try to support each other. We are a very supportive community, but also you might pick up a little bit of information or a little idea or something that you can change, another one of those marginal gains, which will allow you to try and take some positive steps and take some control back of your MS, because God knows it doesn't feel like we are in control a lot of the time. So controlling the areas that you can control is going to be a good thing. I'd say one of the biggest things that I'm not saying I'm any good at it. I just know that I've had a positive experience with it, and it's something I want to do more of, is mindfulness. It's something that we're starting to hear more and more about. Mindfulness is something, or a term, I guess, that did crop up a number of years ago. I have found it really helpful, particularly on those really down days. When you can feel it in your gut, you're just feeling low, you don't know what to do. Mindfulness is a great practice to get into, and you can do it on a sort of a bigger scale, setting out bigger sort of meditation sessions, or just having these little moments where you just sort of bring yourself back, where you're aware of what's going on, you're aware of your surroundings, where your feet are planted, where your hands rest, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can taste. All these different sensations, try and bring things back in, and sort of that kind of meditation just will allow you to release some of that negative energy, because negative energy, negative attitude produces negative opportunities, negative consequences. Positive attitude, positive sort of mental state will help you to become more positive and to take better sort of chances when it comes to positive opportunities and things like that. So it's hard to be positive when you've got MS, but we have to try. And that's why groups, and audiences like this and like you guys, I find particularly, really supportive, and hopefully you do too as well. But mindfulness, I guess, just allows you to recenter yourself, just to calm your body down, to release some of those good things into your system. And again, will allow you to release some of that stuff that you are bottling up or hiding behind the mask. So these are just some of the suggestions that I feel would, or certainly things that I've tried that are helping me to talk about my symptoms and to sort of, be a bit more cathartic and get things off my chest, not bottle things up. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an MS professional. These are all just things that I have discovered or tried or been, had suggested to me. So I'm always open to any more suggestions, anything you find that works. Let us know in the comments again. If you enjoyed the video, or even if you didn't enjoy the video, hit like, hit dislike. It really helps the algorithm. It pushes out to more people with MS because YouTube recognizes that in the algorithm. And likewise, if you could subscribe so you'd be notified of future videos, then we can continue on this journey together and support each other and be there for each other. I've loved reading some of the comments on the previous videos we've done, so we'd love to talk to you more as well, or even on our Instagram page over at _living with MS. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.